What's up, everybody? Gaonan here, and welcome to a new episode of Coaching Towards Masters. I introduced this series a couple of months ago, but I hadn't had anybody reach out to me for that coaching until this month, so I'm excited for this new episode we're putting out today. This series peeks into the paid coaching sessions I have with other Eternal players to help them on their journey of working towards Masters. If one-on-one personalized coaching is something you feel like you need to help you in your journey towards Masters Draft, I've included my contact information on the screen now so you can reach out to me to find out what my rates are and see if we can't help you work towards your goal of reaching Masters Draft. Finally, I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, EricHaugen, all the way from Thailand. And Eric, what made you want to do a coaching session with me today?
Before I'd watched your video a bit, I'd done more of the constructed side because I just hadn't really felt like I'd built up enough of a knowledge base to look out for all the ins and outs that go with drafting. So I felt like I wasn't going to be able to be very successful in it. I feel like every draft video I've watched from yours, I feel like I've learned something new in every video, but I wanted to kind of, ride alongside with you in a specific draft that I'm doing because of the endless possibilities with the number of cards. Watching 2 or 3 drafts a week still can't replace like the specific decisions that I might face in a specific draft. So I felt like that type of scenario will allow me to kind of even push hopefully my knowledge and strategies to another level. I wouldn't call myself a great drafter at all. I'd say I'm okay. The highest I've gotten is like mid gold last month, I believe. But I feel like with some extra help I could potentially reach Masters, hopefully. We'll see. I don't know. It's a pipe dream, but you can always dream.
Honestly, it's not a pipe dream because when I first started out playing Eternal, I was probably in a similar boat as you. I hit gold, I hit diamond for a while, and it took me a while to get to a point where I could consistently hit Masters, and I think I even had a season not that long ago where I still only hit diamond after like 25 drafts. Don't beat yourself up. It's a long journey, and like you said, there are a lot of different possibilities that you can have in this. So good news is it looks like you have the gold for drafting, so that's always nice, because part of it too is just repetition and being able to get enough drafts in, because trust me, the first time I got to Masters, it did not take me 7 or 8 or 10 drafts like it's been taking me recently. And I think your reasoning for wanting the coaching is perfect. I love to hear that you're learning things from each video specifically, but you're understanding that even with those specific videos, it's not the same as having a co-pilot basically and being able to talk through these picks, because each draft really is different. Yes, there are common strategies that you want to do. Yes, there are things you can think about looking forward to in the future packs, but at the same time, it's not the same as being in that draft in the moment and going through it with somebody. So I'm really excited to do this today. I think it's going to be great, and I really hope you get a lot out of it and that it'll help you make that next push to Diamond and hopefully Masters after that. I'm ready to hop in when you are.
Okay, sounds great. So some things that jump out at me is I haven't tried this yet, but I understand that the Sentinel tribal thing is something that's somewhat supported. So I don't know how good this Tempered Sentinel is. Like the 5 power seems appealing for bonding, but now that I'm talking this out loud, I realize that at 6, it's not maybe great. Maybe I want a lower cost Sentinel to make use of the bond. But maybe the Tempered Sentinel, and then Find the Way and Trailmaker both look appealing from a fixing standpoint since we lost the Strangers from the prior format. So I feel like fixing is a little harder to come by. Mm-hmm. And in general, I feel like I've liked time when I've played it. So Find the Way and Trailmaker both seem appealing, and Granite Acolyte with losing Welding Torch and Ruination Sledge, I feel like the summon effect with the Iron Sword is there's just less ways to trigger Renown I've encountered, so I've been liking Granite Acolyte as well. So I think I'm probably between those 3, and if I had to choose, I probably would go with the Trailmaker just for the premium fixing, and I feel like it's hard to come by. So that's my thought. What would you go with here?
Yeah, well, I think your thought process is good. Let's start with Tempered Sentinel. So I think the Sentinel strategy is a good one. I'll be honest, it's not one I've gotten to draft yet. So how I think about Tempered Sentinel is you also have Surveiller, the 5/2 4-cost Sentinel that has Pledge on it in packs 2 and 3 in the latest set. So Tempered Sentinel is pretty similar stats, but the difference is that it has Charge and Bond, so you could use something like one of those earlier Sentinels to get this guy out and get him on the board swinging right away. So that is interesting and I think appealing, but I think Tempered Sentinel wouldn't be like my pack one pick one because I think it's a good payoff, but you want to know that you're definitely going to be in that place. I'd rather pick something that's probably going to fit into more decks than Tempered Sentinel would, because you're only going to really want to play Tempered Sentinel if you know you're in that Sentinel deck, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. I like the comparison to Surveillor. That kind of puts it in better context for me.
Find the way, it's good fixing, don't get me wrong, but I usually don't like it just because it's generally pretty slow. If you're spending 1 or 2 turns finding this extra influence that you need to play the cards in your deck, it's not bad, but I just don't prefer it, I guess. I think Trailmaker is fantastic. Like you said, you can play this guy on 2, you're happy to. It's not like a reactive card. It's something you want to play on 2. It's getting you to higher levels of power and it's fixing you. So I think Trailmaker is premium, and I think Granite Acolyte is very good too, but I think it fits into less decks than Trailmaker might, so I would generally lean towards Trailmaker. I think
Okay.
the other card that you didn't mention that's worth mentioning here is probably Nocturnal Creeper. I think this card is pretty good because Deadly is a tough keyword. If you are facing down like the Sentinel deck or something like that, this guy can just trade with one of those big Sentinels. Even if you're facing down a Shadow deck that has Carradine Steward, that card is usually pretty awkward to trade with, but this guy, deals with that basically.
Mm.
Also does a really good job if you have the different primal ping effects like Ice Bow, Dragon Breath, Parry, any of those combos super well with deadly stuff. So I think Nocturnal Creeper, just like Scorpion is a decent pickup, I think Nocturnal Creeper is better. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. But I think I would probably just lean towards Trailmaker here because I feel like it leaves us the most open and it fits in any time deck you're going to play. You're going to play Trailmaker. I mean, the same is probably true for Granite Acolyte, but I feel like being able to get to higher levels of power and fix for different influence probably tips the favor to Trailmaker for me.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. I hadn't really considered Creeper all that much, but that does seem like a good, solid early pick. But I think you've convinced me to start blazing a trail here. So let's go Trailmaker, pick one.
Cool, yeah, let's do it.
Well, interestingly enough, the Creeper shows up in this pack as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know Whirling Duo is a high impact unit, and then I know Ancient Defenses, as I understand it, is a pretty good card for the Sentinel deck. Increasing the powers by +2 helping with the bonding strategy there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Time Worn Sentinel is that appealing to me with the 3 power. So I'd probably be between Ancient Defenses, Whirling Duo, and the Creeper. If I wanted to stay in my lane, I would go with the Creeper, but Ancient Defenses seems like it could be a really high payoff if the Sentinel thing came together. But I don't know if it's something like you said earlier where we don't know if the Sentinels are going to come, so maybe it's too early to take that.
I think Ancient Defenses is even good enough if you're not in the Sentinel deck, but if you're in Praxis, you're going to get Sentinels because they're available in all 4 packs. So I think Ancient Defenses is a totally reasonable pick, but say you didn't get any Sentinels, say it was just a 4-cost Torch. I think this card is still very playable and reasonable, but if we're in Praxis, we know we're going to get Sentinels, so I wouldn't worry about taking Ancient Defenses here. Tempered Sentinel. So the difference between those two for me is that Ancient Defenses is always going to be applicable because it's just some removal at the end of the day, whereas the Tempered Sentinel, you have to be in that Sentinel deck for it to make sense. So I don't mind Ancient Defenses here at all. I probably would take it over Creeper. Duo is a very strong card. You could take it here. It just means you might end up abandoning Trailmaker at the end of the day, whereas if you take Ancient Defenses, I feel like Trailmaker and Ancient Defenses at least go together. As you can see with Time Worn Sentinel, part of the Sentinel theme is also having explorers, and so Trailmaker is an explorer, so that's part of your payoff too, really.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't thinking about Trailmaker being Explorer. My other question, Gao, is do you think I'm maybe possibly overvaluing Whirling Duo because I see it in Constructed a lot, but maybe is it not as effective in Draft? I see it in Constructed a lot, so it just seems like, oh, if it's good in Constructed, it should be good, somewhat good in Limited as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is very good. It is a big tempo play, if you're racing your opponent and stuff like that. So I don't think you're overvaluing it. For me and how I draft, I'm pretty conservative. So if I can kind of establish my lane early that I want to be in, I think that's better. Whirling Duo, it's more focused on a gunslinger deck, which you're either going to be like Rakano or, in part of that Wind Chest tri-faction combination. So Trailmaker and Ancient Defenses pair well together, whereas Whirling Duo kind of takes you a different direction, which isn't necessarily wrong, but because I probably think Ancient Defenses and Whirling Duo are probably on similar footing. I just value trying to build upon what we've already got going before we edge out. I don't think of Whirling Duo as such a big bomb that it should pull us away from what we were already thinking about, if that makes sense.
Okay, all right, let's build the defenses. So pick 3. If we think that Sentinels is going to come across, I guess Common Cause is additional fixing. I've never played this before in Draft, though, so I would consider this for the fixing. I think if we're in Praxis, I would think, depending on how the cards play out, Primal would probably be the third color as a splash, potentially. But Yeti Snowslinger isn't a great splash, I feel like, because it's too early in the curve. But maybe the Skycrack banner would be a good pickup, because then it allows us to splash in the Primal. However, we don't have any Primal pick yet, so it might be too early to go with that. So the other playables I like is Copperheart Marshal, but then that'd be taking us in a completely different direction. And I actually like Lethari Target Caller as well, but both of those are completely different directions. So I think I would go with the Common Cause here, but my considerations is Common Cause, Banner, and Snowslinger probably.
First off, I think you identified the right cards to be looking at. I probably would cut Common Cause out just because it's not guaranteed fixing. Like you said, if you're in Praxis, you're likely to end up in that Genev tri-faction combination. So I would rather just have the locked-in fixing with Skycrag Banner rather than the Common Cause. I also agree with what you said about Yeti Snowslinger as far as it being too early in the curve to splash. But it is early. We don't know necessarily if we're going to be Praxis or not. You could, arguably take the Yeti Snowslinger here and just see if you end up in Elysian or Skycrag or something like that. And then I think Copperheart Marshal is a reasonable card. 3/3 for 3 with upside is nice. Copperheart Marshal basically has Renown, right? So, and it's even a little worse than Renown because it doesn't work with fast spells and stuff like that. So if we've already identified that it's more difficult to come by Renown stuff, it might not be great to pick up Copperheart Marshal. And as far as Lethari Target Caller, I think it is a really good card. I'm not sure if it's worth taking that over just fixing to make, smooth out our deck for later. So that's kind of where I'm really between, is mostly between the Skycrag Banner and the Lethari Target Caller, because I think of those 3 cards we looked at between Yeti Snowslinger, Copperheart Marshal, and Target Caller, I think Target Caller is probably the strongest one, just because Quick Draw is very difficult to deal with. So I'm really between the Target Caller and the Banner here.
And talking through it, I feel like I'm going to lean Banner here. I mean, it'll be sad if, some good Shadow cards start. Well, the other thing is there's quite a bit of Shadow left in here, but maybe it's too early to try and look at signals because there's only been 2 picks, so maybe that's trying to read too much in there. I'm leaning towards the Banner maybe as the more conservative option here.
I think the only signal we should be reading from this pack is that there's no Tine card. I don't know if you know this, but in every pack there's 1 card of every color. The card could be potentially a multi-faction card, but there's always a card of every color at the start of a pack. So the fact that there's no time card here might signal that the person in front of us is potentially in time.
I didn't realize that every pack has at least one of the color cards. Okay, interesting.
So it could be that the person in front of us is in time and time is going to get cut off for us. I mean, still taking Skycrag Banner here, I don't think it hurts us necessarily. I don't know how much we should read into this signal. Like you said, it's very early on. You know, a rare and a common were taken from this pack. I'm trying to think of commons in the curated packs that are like super high value, like higher value than Lethrai Target Caller that somebody would take. It could have been a piece of removal like Extinguish or something like that. That's kind of where my mind goes. Maybe some people value Dragon Breath like super, super highly, so it could have been something like that. But could have been that it was just a time legendary, and that was the one time card in the pack too, and somebody just rare drafted it. I don't think we should read too much into it yet, but it just seems like a little bit of an odd pack. So I think it's fine to take Skycrag Banner here and kind of see where the draft takes us, but I wouldn't fault you if you wanted to take Target Caller or even Snowslinger either. I think either one is reasonable here. So ultimately,
All
your
right.
call there.
I'll grab the banner and just see if we continue to not see time. Let's try the banner here.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, no time. Cards I like, the Granite Acolyte again, I feel like is a really solid 3-drop. I always like combat tricks, so Strength of Many I would play. I don't know if I want to go Justice yet, because we're already thinking about a Genève potentially. Okay, I guess I'm between the Elysian Banner for more fixing and the Granite Acolyte, and I'd probably pick the Granite Acolyte just as a higher impact card than the banner.
I think that's probably right in this situation, given that we noticed last pack there's no time cards. Once again, I think Elysian Banner probably does count as a time card in this pack, but still the fact that there aren't like time playables here is a little bit concerning. So I think it's reasonable to take the Granite Acolyte here. It could very well be that we end up in more of a Rakano shell. Just some of the cards we're seeing come through, you know, it makes me think that Rakano pairing might be open in packs 1 and 4. So that Skycrag Banner by no means is dead to us, because that helps us splash powerful Ixten cards from packs 2 and 3 like Display of Honor or Coastal Beastmaster. I think picking up Granite Acolyte here is great.
Okay. Oh man, they gotta give me the punter. I think I was watching Moneybag streaming a draft one time, and his kind of common companion on there, Sizzle, was saying something about never pass up a punter. I don't know. It's like if we want to stay with potentially this Praxis, the Temple Raider seems pretty good with the Sentinel Ally, 2/2 with the Ally to be a 4/4. I think if I want to stay with my Praxis idea here, I would probably want the Temple Raider, and if I'm looking to pivot away from Praxis, I would consider the punter or the shield. Actually, I've been pretty happy with shield in the decks I've played it. I'd probably end up going with the Temple Raider just to try and stay in the lane I've already established, but it's really hard to pass up this punter here.
Once again, I think you've properly identified the most high impact cards. I think Stalwart Shield is definitely reasonable. Like we kind of mentioned before, there aren't as many renown triggers. You don't have the great spellcraft weapons anymore, and being able to be on offense and defense is very good with Stalwart Shield. That being said, I think it's probably too far away from where we are right now to probably take that over one of these other cards. And I think from what I'm hearing, it seems like you're too attached to the Praxis idea at this point. Just because I'm thinking we haven't really seen the time cards to help us get to where we want to be as far as Sentinels. Like we haven't seen, you know, the Scourstone Sentinels. Like that's one of the big payoffs for that Praxis deck, and we haven't seen any of those yet. We haven't seen many other time Sentinels for us, so I would probably lean towards Punter here just because it is a really good card. I mean, it plays defense very well. 6 as far as defense is really hard to get through. Like, you know, this blocks Coastal Beastmaster just fine, which is great for your 5-drop. And it does really well when you've got your Yetis and you're kicking them in the air and hitting your opponent in the face with them, because at the very least you've got a 1/1 Yeti that's sitting around that you can just get in the air and you're hitting your opponent for 5. So I think Gaonan
Okay.
Punter is totally reasonable here. I think it's definitely a stronger card than Temple Raider. Like Temple Raider is like a okay payoff, a 4/4 for 3. If you think about curving into this card, you're probably not that likely to have a Sentinel out on turn 2. So that means if you're playing this guy on turn 3, he's probably just going to be a 2/2. Hopefully you get to play a Sentinel on turn 4 and he becomes a 4/4. But if you don't, then this guy could be sitting around for a while doing nothing for you.
Okay, that's a good point. I'd definitely be feeling pretty bad if he was sitting on the board as a 2/2 on turn, even by turn 5, and I could have had the chance to play something as high impact as a punter. So, okay, from hearing you talk through this, I'm gonna go with the punter.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh man, and we're somewhat rewarded because the Slope Sergeant shows up, which gives me good vibes that Yetis could be available here. I feel like Valkyrie Cadet could be great with weapons, but there's not enough weapons in the format, too far away from what we're trying to do. So I think it's a pretty clear Slope Sergeant here, in my mind.
Yeah, I think so. It is interesting that now that we've kind of gone a little bit away from the Praxis Sentinels idea, that we then see one of the best payoffs for Sentinels pop up with Serene Excavator. Getting a 2/3 flyer for 3 is fantastic. Great late game top deck. There's a lot of stalls in this format, so Excavator is just a way where you can ping away at your opponent, similar to how Punter, allows you to put a Yeti in the air and you just get to smack your opponent while the board is stalled out. So I don't think it's worth taking over the Slope Sergeant. I would probably continue down the path that we've started going down and just take Slope Sergeant, because it is a super high impact card. I know recently Team TDC with well-known drafters like Isomorphic, M. Gallop, and a bunch of others just came out with their most recent list, and I think Isomorphic said he would play like 5 Slope Sergeants if he could.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because he thinks this card is that high impact. It's really good when you get the bond chains going. It gives you card selection to find, ditch that extra power that you don't need for cards that are actually helping you win the game. So, yeah, I think Slope Sergeant's a great pickup for us here.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is why I want to do the coaching. I wasn't even looking at the Excavator, so I'm glad you pointed that out. I didn't even realize this guy had flying, actually. So that is kind of tough that that's in there now, but I guess we'll go with the Slope Sergeant. I just remember the Snow Slinger being available earlier, and so I feel like I've seen more Yetis available through the earlier picks, which hopefully Yetis is maybe more open than Sentinels. Maybe there was something for the Sentinel deck that was, or some great removal that was just too impactful to pass up for the potential time drafter ahead of us.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I'll go Slope Sergeant and see where this takes us.
Yeah.
Okay, I do not mind playing a second Granite Acolyte here, and it's really the only thing in our colors, so I think it's a clear Acolyte.
Yeah, I think so too. Other just kind of noteworthy thing here is, once again, no time card, so I think we made the right decision to stick with the Slope Sergeant there versus kind of wavering and going back to the Excavator instead. So I think it's good that we stay down the Skycrag path that we've kind of started going down. And even though our pack one pick one was that Trailmaker, like, we're not married to it, and I think we're building a pretty strong deck at the moment. If Acolyte wasn't here and say it was just all Argenport cards, I would probably just take Argenport Banner or something like that.
Okay.
Just in case you see something that you want to try and splash for it. But yeah, I think it's easy Acolyte here.
Yeah, talking about not being too married to the pack one pick one, I think there were like 3 drafts in a row I watched from you where you didn't play your pack one pick one, and that kind of cemented to me to, hey, don't put too much emphasis on these first picks. I do a little bit of Magic drafting, and I feel like in there, a lot of times you do play your pack one pick one. It seems like a lot more often, but for whatever reason, I could not articulate why that is the case. But I feel like watching more successful drafters, I feel like you have to be really willing to ditch those first picks sometimes. So, okay, Acolyte it is. Okay, on this pack, I would take the Extinguish as a splash just because it's really good removal, I feel like, and the other cards don't excite me that much. So
That is exactly the right thing to be doing. It's way more high impact than everything else that's here. Like, we could play Hissing Spiketail, but we'd be pretty upset at this point if we had to go that direction. So I rather just take something that I'm even like happy taking a little consistency hit to my deck to be playing premium removal like Extinguish.
okay, great. Man, justice really does seem open here. I would take the Copperhole Porter, but not looking to play it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, nothing else there is really like a high value playable. So if you take Porter, like maybe we end up playing it. Like if we somehow end up in Rakano or somewhere different than we are now, I think Porter's the best card. So yeah.
I'll put that in the pool for now. Oh man, Jack's choice.
Nice.
I think I would take it as another potential Shadow Splash. It just, well, it's clearly the most high impact card left of the three, and I just feel like we're still too far away from Rakano, so I'd probably go with the Jack's choice here.
Yeah, I think so. It is interesting that there's another Copperhole Marshal here, but yeah, I think it's still right to take the Jack's choice. We'll see. I'm interested to see what these last two picks are like, because if they keep coming Justice cards, like maybe we really should be Rakano, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll probably take the Cerso's Meddling and not look to play it.
Yeah, it is fine removal, like if you're really desperate. Look at that.
Barkeep's Friend, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but the fact that we've got our last two picks are in our colors, that's, I think, at least a little bit of a positive sign that we're in the right place.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it seems like time definitely was getting cut in front of us, so I think that was good to pivot to focusing more on the Skycrag. Oh man, Thrashing Duneworm. I think Grandfather's Axe is a clear cut.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think more about like whether or not you want to splash the shadow, or are you looking for cutting the weakest cards at this point, or where should we start with the cutting here?
I think kind of the first thing we want to think about is what is our splash color? Technically right now we have more fire cards than we have time cards. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're Skycrag splashing time or anything like that, but I think it's something to think about. You know, which cards do I want to be able to play more consistently? Do I want to be able to play my time cards more consistently, or do I want to be able to play my fire cards more consistently? Because that's kind of the mentality that you want to go in with, and understanding, okay, it seems like Primal is probably our main color, and then maybe Time and Fire and Shadow are all these potential quote-unquote splashes, even though Fire and Time are obviously going to be heavier splashes than Shadow will be.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. In terms of identifying the splash, here's the thing, like I feel like there's more cards that I want to play earlier in the curve in Time, even though it's the lesser card counts. Like I want to play Scorpion early, I want to play Trailmaker early, I want to play Mesmerized Moth early, whereas like the red cards, it's more like Ancient Defenses. It's I want to play it as early as possible, but I don't mind playing it later potentially. Same with Burnout. So that's what's leaning me to, even though the fire count's higher, it's like I just feel like where the cards are in the curve makes me feel like I want fire to be the splash over time. But maybe I'm not thinking about it the right way there.
No, I think you are thinking about it the right way. I think that's exactly what you want to be thinking about. Like, when you're thinking about splashing cards, you're thinking, am I happy to have this card waiting in my hand to be played? Or do I need to be able to play this card the moment I should be able to, you know, given the amount of power that's in my deck? Like, do I need to play this right away? Do I need to play this on curve? Or can I hold this for a couple of turns and it's still going to be impactful? That's kind of what you want to think about with your splashes. You know, that's kind of one reason I talked about Granite Acolyte earlier. It's generally a card I don't splash because it's very good on curve. You know, if you're going 2-drop into 3-drop, I think it is reasonable later into the game as well, but only if you have flyers out, right? Like if your opponent's playing Beach Boy after Beach Boy and you're coming back with a Granite Acolyte or something like that because that's what's been waiting in your hand while they've been building up to 6 power to get to Beach Boy and you're building up to 6 power so you can find that first fire influence, then, Granite Acolyte doesn't really make the cut, so to speak. I'm not saying we should cut it necessarily, but it's just like some food for thought.
Yeah, that's interesting. I put so much favor on Acolyte just because in certain videos I've seen from you and other drafts I've followed, it's performed pretty well. But you're right. If it's not in the main colors, I wonder if it's worth even as a splash potentially. Maybe not.
The cards that I'm looking at that are pretty high impact for us as far as fire, I'm looking at Carnivorous Sauropod, Ancient Defenses, and probably Burnout, maybe Jack's Choice. I think those are all pretty high impact. The other stuff like the Heavy Axe, the Barbarian Camp, the Barkeep's Friend, the Rally doesn't necessarily speak to me like, if this card is dead in my hand, am I going to be happy about it,
Yep, I totally agree with you there. You take the Barbarian Camp out as well?
I think we can hold on to it at the moment just because we know we're going to need to cut some units here. So we might rather have Barbarian Camp than, say, the 19th or 20th unit or something like that. I think it's fine to hold it for the moment.
I think we could, the Gillip Flames could ping a flyer down, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think our next move should be to look at our units here before we take out more interaction.
Okay, well then let's look at our units here. The interesting thing would be if we cut the 2 Acolytes, those are our only fire units besides the Sauropod, which we clearly want to keep in Splash given its impact. So do we forego the Acolytes here?
I think we can. What we're losing out with Acolyte is the potential to put it on Aviasaur or Moth and be able to knock away at our opponent that way. We then don't have any renown triggers for Huntsman or Mischief Yeti. It's a tough call. Like I said, this isn't a card I would normally splash for, but I don't know if, given the potential synergy it has in our deck, if it's like good enough to keep, because Huntsman is technically more interaction for us if we have this card in our deck and are able to renown it. But if we take out the Acolytes, we don't really have that capability anymore. Same type of thing with Mischief Yeti. That's more interaction as far as getting snowballs and stuff like that. So I kind of think we want to keep the Acolytes, even though I normally wouldn't.
You talked me into it with the Huntsman. I think one of the reasons I was happy about getting the second Huntsman was thinking about that interaction with the Acolyte. I kind of forgot about that. So, all right, I think I do like both of them actually in the deck. Man, I'm having a hard time then which unit I cut because it doesn't feel like there's a part of the curve that's too heavy potentially. Each of these units feels like it fills a role. I guess maybe we could cut one of the Yetis potentially. Like maybe 3 is too many there.
So one unit I'd be looking at here is probably Scorpion. We never got any of the primal ping effects with like Parry or Ice Bow or Dragon Breath. So Scorpion loses some of its value. And if we cut Scorpion, we're down to 8 time cards. It makes it a little bit easier on us because then we just have Trailmaker as the only non-primal 2-drop for us. And I think we really want all the Mischief Yetis because we got so many punters. The potential Slope Sergeant bonding out. Like, that's still a turn 4 bond with Mischief Yeti if, your Mischief Yeti is stuck around. So I think it's worth keeping all 3 Mischief Yetis, even though they're not, like, super high impact always.
That convinces me. I liked Scorpion a lot when I played it in draft, but it's usually been with one of those synergies you talked about, Ice Bow, Dragon Breath, Parry. So, yep, I agree. Scorpion's going to be a
And then I think the other unit that I'm probably looking at as on the chopping block is something like Sandcrawler, just because it's pretty replaceable. It's not doing a ton for us. It's just a 3/3 for 3, and I'm not convinced that that's what our deck is going to need to win.
Yeah, it's not going to get buffed by defenses. be very desperate to put it as my target for my acolyte. I want to save that for some of these renowns or flyers. So
Right,
I agree.
exactly.
The best this is ever going to be is a 3/3 probably, and it feels like we can do better. So.
And so I think we still probably want to cut one more unit. I'm almost wondering if we cut Punter, Gargantua. We only have 4 Yetis in our deck, so if we draw multiple Punters, but we don't have any Yetis, he really shines when you have those Yeti synergies going. I almost wonder if it's worth cutting there. Barbarian Camp could get the axe. It just kind of depends how much power you want to run in this deck. It feels like a 17 power deck to me, but I mean, to guarantee that you're getting up to 7 or 8 on a relatively reasonable basis, maybe you do want 18 power and we really need 2 more cuts. Mostly it seems like it should be coming from the units section of all that, just because that's where we're kind of bloated.
It's hard to cut a punter, but it might be one of the possible choices here, because I think like you said, if we had more Yetis in the mid part of the curve to feed this, I would feel better about having 3. But yeah, we only have the 3 Mischief Yetis and the Slope Sergeant, so it doesn't make sense to run 3 probably. If I'm thinking like, okay, what do I draw late to finish a 3rd Punter or a Gargantuan? I'd much rather have the Gargantuan, so I'll cut one of the Punters. I do like 18 power because, as you mentioned, there's really 3 big power sinks we could use that extra power for. Duneworm, Sauropod, and Gargantua, yep.
I think that's kind of the decision you have is between, do I want to play the 2nd Huntsman as my 19th unit, or do I want to get rid of Barbarian Camp? You could take out Barbarian Camp, you could take out Gilded Flames, and you could put in that 3rd Punter if you wanted to. Like, I think these are all kind of reasonable decisions. Like, we're kind of making the best of a unfortunate situation because the deck really didn't come together the way we wanted it to. Like, we got past these Yetis early on, and then it didn't really pan out. Then we started getting some strong time cards. Then we got tons of ancient defenses. At the end of the day, it's trying to be like semi-tribal synergy, but it's also just a pile of cards too, kind of.
That's true. It's like we got 3 Punters in a non-Yeti deck and 3 Ancient Defenses in a non-Sentinel deck. It's just like if those tribals would have come together, that would have been great, but we're just trying to kind of make it work.
I mean, one thing to think about here is, so if you take out Gilded Flames, you take out Barbarian Camp, you're left with 3 Ancient Defenses, Honeypot, Burnout, Extinguish, Jex Choice. That's 7 pieces of interaction right there. That doesn't count your Granite Acolytes that could go on Huntsmans, that could go on Mischief Yetis for snowballs. Doesn't count your Thrashing Duneworm for its Amplify effect. It doesn't count Tunneling Gargantua. So maybe that's enough right there.
Okay, I think this is probably the way I go. It feels like there's enough interaction and enough finishers and high payoff cards to win, while still creating a consistent, mainly primal heavy early unit base with having the 2nd Huntsman being able to still fit in there. So I think I like this.
Cool. Let's get the power real quick. Obviously, you watch my content, so you know I prefer 2 faction streamlined decks with, a light splash into a 3rd color. So the fact that we're doing a 4-color deck is not necessarily my forte.
I tend to be on the more greedy end of the spectrum and try and fit that 4th color in, and it tends to bite me. But I don't know. I think that's probably the way I gotta roll with just the way this came together.
Yeah, definitely with this deck. I think there's no other way to really build this deck.
Okay, so let's see. For Primal, we've got 4, 6, 8, Bannerman for 9, Trailmaker for 10. So that's pretty good, right? 10 sources?
Yeah, 10 sources of Primal is pretty good.
Alright, Fire is going to be 5, 7, 8. So 9, so that's good. And then Time, 3, 5, 6. And then I guess 6.5, because I guess we need a time for Trailmaker to come out. But
yeah, it is kind of awkward. So I feel like that's somewhere we should like make a mental note, like, okay, this might be something we want to tweak potentially.
Okay. And then Shadow, we've got 5, 6. So that's good. So do we go to 5 Shadow and increase it to a solid 7 time?
I think you could even go to 4 Shadow, potentially. Just take out both Shadow sigils, because that'll make our opening hands a lot better as far as not getting stuck with one shadow sigil in our hand. Because, with the redraw rule, you're guaranteed somewhere between 2 and 4 power. And if you're playing 2 shadow sigils, you have a chance to get those 2 shadow sigils, which would force you to go down to 6 cards at that point. This allows you to play 4 shadow sources. You've got 10 primal, you've got 9 time and 9 fire, which seems reasonable given that we want to hit double time and double fire. I'm wondering if you don't go up another primal. I guess you would want to take out a fire.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Just because you want to be able to play Trailmaker as soon as you have it, because that's adding to all these totals. And Primal, we want to be able to play. We have Slope Sergeant as double Primal. So we need double Primal, we need double time, we need double fire, and single shadow. So that's kind of the big things to keep in mind when you're using your tokens, using your Bannerman and Trailmaker and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. Boy, this is a greedy influence ask from the deck, but I think this is probably the most solid power. I like that. I like taking down the fire to increase the primal just because of how heavy the early part of the curve is in primal. And like you said, we don't mind playing Acolyte late as a trigger potentially. Like even like putting this down on 5 to increase the clock on the flyers is good.
Yep, or playing Ancient Defenses late. Like, I think it's fine, even if you're playing that card on 6 or something like that.
All right, well, this was a lot of fun drafting and putting this together. I mean, my prospects, I felt like, we did the best we could with the different directions that the draft seemed to be pulling us in. But I'll be happy with probably between 4 and 5 wins, I think, will be a solid performance from this deck. I definitely, anything above 4 wins, I think will be an outperformance, just given the greed of the influence. But it's got some power in it, definitely.
I think that's probably a pretty reasonable spot to put this deck, is around 4 wins. But yeah, I think it has the chance to do some pretty powerful things with Dune Worm and Hunters just finishing out games for you and stuff like that. So I think the big thing will just be cognizant about using your removal wisely, slowing down your opponent if you need to get to that late game for punters and stuff like that. Probably valuing your Infused Guardian pretty highly. Like if they can trade 3 cards for it, if it's like holding them back, I would probably just continue to hold Infused Guardian back or something like that.
Makes sense. Just keep it as a strong defender and wait for the punter to come through, or the Gargantua. Like it has finishers if I can stall the mid game.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be really interested. You'll have to report back to me to how this deck actually does. I'll be interested.
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely shoot you an email with that, Gal. So, but I really appreciate the coaching. I feel like I got, it was well worth, the time, and I really appreciate you taking the time to really kind of carefully go through all the picks and helping me with constructing the deck. There's definitely a lot of areas in the draft where I wasn't even considering cards that we ended up picking, so I felt like I definitely sort of opened up options by going through the coaching, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, good. No, I'm glad. Just want to close out this drafting and deck building portion of this new Coaching Towards Masters episode with Eric by saying thank you for being here. I do appreciate it. I hope you were able to learn something along the way from the coaching session I had with Eric. So Eric got 4 wins with this deck, which was right on target with what we expected. And the follow-up questions I had for him were about hitting his influence requirements, if the Yeti synergies came into play, how splashing for Granite Acolyte felt. So as far as the influence, he said he had no trouble hitting his requirements of time, primal, fire, shadow. So that's really great that we got the power base in a good spot. He also said that the Punter and Mischief Yeti sub-synergy did some good damage in some of his games, and that Gargantuan was a nice finisher as well. He also felt like Granite Acolyte pulled his weight because he would play it further down his curve and enable Renown on the Huntsman to remove one of his opponent's flyers. That was good, and he also said sometimes he used it to speed up the clock with one of his flyers. Once again, if you guys are interested in personalized one-on-one coaching, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to do more of these coaching sessions and share parts of them with the community. The reason that I decided to only show the first pack was just because I want the experience to be special for the person that is putting in both the time and the money to have this coaching session with me. But if you're interested in something like this, don't hesitate to reach out to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Coaching Towards Masters, and until next time, thanks for watching and have a good one.